I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today. And I do realize this is the second recording of this episode in 10 years for Rheaply. So
That's right.
congratulations again
Thank
on
you.
10 years.
Thank you. I'm super excited about still being in business, still growing, still trying to figure out the little corner of the world of circular economy that we operate in. And I mean, there's as much, I think it's almost new. Like when you say 10 years, I'm like, oh yeah, I have those scars. I have that pound of flesh exacted. I have those lessons learned. We've created that amount of impact. But I'm like, oh my God, like I almost feel like we've done almost nothing given the amount of work to be done and given the amount of new tooling and new cool things that are out there for us to try. And so um, don't let my lack of kind of water and energy fool you. I'm very excited about the future and kind of some of the things that we got cooking at Replay.
Absolutely. And you bring up a really, I'm going to say, staggering point around the state of circularity. And despite so much technology at our fingertips, so much more wisdom and lived experience around the power of circular economy specifically, and circular materials economy, which we're going to dive into today, the circularity rate globally has dropped,
It's dropping,
which
right?
makes no sense. One of the things that I distinctly remember about meeting you, I think 5 or 6 years ago, you're a returning guest on the podcast,
Yes.
was your story about being a neuroscientist turned
Yes.
sustainability technologist.
Yes.
And the pivotal moment that you had where you wanted to build this reused bridge and a transition to like create a better world, more wealth for the global majority, which
Yes.
are communities who have typically been left out of a linear economy.
That's right.
And also your mission to be, for your story to be unremarkable. And that stuck
Yes.
with me.
Yes.
And I was wondering, for folks who don't know who you are,
Yes.
Dr. Garry Cooper, why don't you just start and tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your journey into how Rheaply was founded and also a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, my backstory is I'm a Midwesterner. I grew up in a very middle to low income family, and in Ohio. And I went to school, studied math, literally did a BS in math, did a BA in chemistry, worked on cancer, reproductive cancer research for 4.5 years in undergrad. And then I worked came to Chicago in '08 and did a PhD at Northwestern in neuroscience, working on Parkinson's disease exclusively, trying to find a cure for the disease. Did a collaboration between organic chemistry lab and a physiology lab. Those labs happened to be the largest labs at the university at the time. And so it being in both those labs with a lot of funding, you buy a lot of stuff. And, I felt we were in a privileged position to share the stuff that we weren't using or would never use again with people who were with labs that were less fortunate, that were smaller. It turns out 90% of the stuff in a chemistry lab, every chemistry lab is using. Same thing in biology. You can be working on cancer and I can be working on Parkinson's disease. I tell you, 80-90% of the stuff, you're basically using the same kind of stuff, but we don't share them very often. And at the time, I remember reflecting on if we're sharing seats in the back of our cars with strangers and bedrooms in our house with strangers, and those are scaled at that time in 2012, 13, those were billion-dollar publicly traded companies. Why aren't we sharing the assets that aren't even ours with our working peers? So that's kind of the opening thesis to where we started, which was in a lab, which is what I knew. I'd spent that point probably 16, 17 years in a laboratory of some sort.
Wow.
And we tried to create literally circularity just on my floor, right? Just on the floor, the one floor at Northwestern in the Lurie building, downtown Chicago. We were just saying, hey, I have this sodium chloride. I don't need it anymore. I got some other sodium. Do you need? And just to create that kind of community actually, which is actually a big part of our mission. Is one of the first 3 words in Rheaply's mission is build a community, not technology, not a platform. And so we got started doing that in 2016, and just with labs, just on that floor. In 2017, we got an opportunity to start working with the University of Chicago. And as we started to build out, we realized 2 things. One, this problem was not remanded to just universities. And 2, it could not just be solved with internal reuse of assets, because at some point in time, the utility of something that you bought is no longer helpful to you or maybe a nearby colleague, but could be helpful to someone on the other side of town
Right.
or the other state. And so we decided 2018-ish, definitely in 2019, to pursue organizations outside the university space. And then secondly, we decided to start connecting all of our customers as much as they wanted to be connected. So whether that's I want to see what's out there, or I want to share my things, or I want to share part of my things, or I want to share things that have no IP, or whatever those business rules, we decided to start having the conversation of like, how can we Uberize, how can we Airbnbize the working world?
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of had this reflection of, if we can do that, what does it mean? And, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation had been publishing a lot of this work, but we kept thinking like, wow, like everyone's just talking about recycling, as a means of circular economy. And again, not as a person who spent his whole life in circular economy or sustainability, but I kept asking myself like, well, if what you want is circular economy and what you're doing is recycling, why not just call it recycling? Right? Like, why make up new terms? And it turns out, no, that is among the least best thing we could be doing. And so, so that kind of just got us into a whole world of asking really interesting questions to the Fortune 500, to FANGs, to the governments, to nonprofits. And now we have one of the biggest reuse networks in the country. And really just trying to make reuse things, trying to make reuse. Yeah, I think our first stop is to try to make it as straightforward as recycling. And then our next stop is to make it as straightforward as just throwing something away. So I always talk about our competition is not with another business, it's with the trash. Have to make our solution as convenient, as scaled, but also more valuable than just throwing something away. So I think we're still on that mission.
We're still on the mission with you, Garry. And what's really interesting is you're describing a circular materials economy beyond recycling.
Yes.
And there's a nuance that a lot of people miss in that, you have this broad economic model with
Yes.
CE. You're minimizing waste and pollution, keeping materials in use for as long as possible. But what
Right.
you're doing is actually really pragmatic, very specific, and you're thinking about the value chain. How
Yes.
are materials being sourced? How are they being
Yes.
used? How are you
Yes.
designing for reuse,
Yes.
etc.? And I think that's one of the things that I love about Rheaply, and I love about the work that you're leading as an advocate, as a pioneer. I'm going to use that word. That you're actually thinking about all the components that are being designed and managed to actually be meaningful
Totally.
in a circular economy. So
Totally.
what's the nuance that folks are still missing 10 years later?
Yeah. The nuance is I borrow a few phrases. One phrase I borrow from a woman named Stephanie Phillips, who is a sustainability leader at the city of San Antonio. And one of the things she says all the time is, the landfill don't deserve these materials. They're too valuable. And so I think one thing that people miss, and it's actually hard to like get a number on this, I've really, really tried, but how much value we actually have beneath our feet that we've put there. Not that's there naturally, that we've extracted from the ground, we've done something with it. And they go, I don't want to do it. Let's put it back down in there anymore. There's, I would say, at least in the trillion-dollar level of stuff that we just throw away globally every single year, that we just don't create a market for it. I mean, between the Federal Reserve and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, their estimates are every year about $600 billion in corporate America, $600 billion Ellen says 630, the Federal Reserve floats 590 to 610. $1 billion of stuff goes underutilized. And I'll tell you that $610 billion is larger than the economies, the GDPs of 44 of the 50 states in the United States. So there's literally an economy of the stuff that we're not using that's on the scale of 44, bigger than 44 of our 50 states. And so I think what people are missing is when they hear the words trash, waste, cycling, you lose the value component. You go, oh, it's just secondhand, or let's throw it away, or let's get it off my lawn, or let's get it out of my dock or out of my building. But what you're talking about are valuable materials and assets. And what the problem is, you don't know who needs them next, and you don't know what they're actually worth. And so part of our job is to figure out who are the end markets for these materials and these products and these components, and what is their actual worth. Because if we turn all the assets that we're throwing away into just cash, right? So if I just came to you and I said, oh, you got 10,000 chairs you're about to put in the landfill, let me give you $1 million. Would you throw the $1 million in the landfill? You wouldn't do that.
No.
So I think people aren't seeing these things as valuable assets in inventory. They see them as problems and waste and trash. And so I think part of our march, although we're not a marketing firm, and others, is to kind of really change that behavioral kind of thought process of not seeing the thing you no longer need as waste or trash, just value that you can't use. So then the question is, who can use that value? That's one thing
Absolutely.
we get to change.
You know, I love that you mentioned behavior and mindset, because when we talk about circular materials transformation, and even in my career, in my own work, it's access, it could be scale, it could be design, it could be access to data. But if you don't have the right mindset and the right clarity on why you're starting, and really, I think purpose driven transformation is still important today more than ever, especially in the US.
Yes.
People really, it doesn't click.
It doesn't click.
Yeah.
It doesn't click. And also what I'd say is that the world, I say the linear economy is a strong force. What do I mean by that? Everything draws you to it. It's so convenient to order. I don't care if you're ordering for your house. I don't care if you're ordering for your business. We have $1 million procurement systems and ERPs that help you buy if you're a business. We have phones that are $1,000 in our that help us buy as a consumer. What technologies do you know of at that scale, at that level of convenience, do we have to help us save and reuse and refurbish and repair? They're not at scale. So everything in your home life and your working life, the infrastructure that you live in, pulls you into this linear motion. And so we fight with, how do we make circularity as convenient when the general pull of gravity is toward linearity? And I think one of the things that we've been trying to do is get within your procurement process. Because I go and think that every procurement leader in the world, if there was a cheaper, more sustainable option for a component, for material, for any input, or for a product, they'd buy it, they'd get it. But it's not, it's so thrifty. I have to go to this conference, I have to know this person, I have to know that company, I have to be in innovative thinking, whatever the words you want to use. And then you see some supply chain leaders and some procurement leaders kind of picking up large scale circular initiatives and materials. But if we, the service layer, try and keep trying to make that more convenient, puncturing this kind of linear motion, I think that's where the scaled kind of behavioral change comes in, is that you have people go like, oh, in my normal procurement motion, there was a sustainable option and I just picked it and it was cheaper, better, faster. Great.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with my heart. It has nothing to do with my politics. It's just like, it just makes better business sense, or makes better home sense if we're talking about something you're purchasing at home. And we just haven't gotten there. Now, I also think that that's because the things that are linear, the infrastructure is well sourced, it's an incumbent, It has a lot of funding behind it. There's a lot for people to lose with the people who own those platforms and that technology and those workflows. It's hard work, but I think that's what I talk about all the time is not just how we make it cool or we provide the business case, but like people got to get up and do this work. And how can we make it stupid simple? Like it's as almost as easy as what they're doing today. It just happens to cost less and more dependable, more resilient, and be more sustainable.
Yeah, and it is literally a new economy. When you think about and just through a supply chain lens, it's very easy for things to go forward, for us to consume in some way. But a take back, reverse infrastructure, even if you take at the material level plastics, if we don't have the infrastructure, we
No,
don't have the
no,
workflows,
no.
but the business case is there.
It's there. I mean, what's wild about what you're saying is, and I think about this all the time is, I won't name the company, but I was with a bottling company, bottles a lot for Coca-Cola and for some beers. And I visited one of their plants. We're trying to do a deal with them. And they said, Gary, we know where every bottle is. If it moves an inch, we know everything about this bottle of Coca-Cola. We know everything about this can of beer. And I go, great. What happens when you sell it? Don't know. It's in the empty cans in a recycling blue bin. And that's where we are, is that we have so much technology to track the levels of where a can of Coke is amongst billions of cans of Coca-Cola. But we are just like all thumbs when it comes to like, but where does it go once the consumer is done with it? And that's because of what you said, is there's like near zero, not zero, near zero private infrastructure to reclaim things. Most of the infrastructure you see, notwithstanding my friends at WM and Republic Services, are public.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to undersource. They're not really innovative. They're not business positive. They cost money. And then in the regions of the country and in the communities in those regions where there isn't a huge tax basis, you don't see any of that near zero infrastructure because they can't afford it. So what do you see? You go to New Orleans, and I've been there on East New Orleans, post Katrina. What do you see in people's lawns? Stacks and stacks of old tires. And you know why? Because people come and, oh, my tires broke. Oh, an auto shop, when they've taken some tires off your car, you know where they dispose of them? In East New Orleans, where, I don't know, probably 90% Black African Americans live. And that's just what the thing is today. It's just like people just dump tires.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like, do they have the money to have the infrastructure to reclaim tires or to get Cooper or Michelin or no. So I find the aspiration of true reverse logistics, product level at scale, some massive function of our infrastructure, both digital and hard and physical infrastructure. And while we have more progress, I think Rheaply is one of those companies. On the digital side, we suffer from not having a lot of the logistical and physical infrastructure to run these reverse loops where we have it all in place for forward. And so, as I said, it's the gravity of the linear economy continues to say, well, why should we even care about it?
Yeah. I mean, you're calling out some really great points. I think the last time when we spoke, we were still hung up on the business case. And I remember we were talking about ROI and breathable air. It's like, so that didn't work. But now we have a hard industrialized business case for folks listening. And I want to unpack this in a couple stages. What are the KPIs that really, really matter? Not necessarily landfill diversion.
Right.
But like
Right.
that's where we were 5-6 years
Right.
ago when you and I spoke. Where are we now? What should people really focus on?
So the things that we focus on at Rheaply, and we kind of coach our customers to focus on are things that make the business money. So there's a few kind of KPIs embedded in there. So the one is revenue. So can I have I'll use a chair. Can I sell a chair And can I take that chair out every 3 years? Because that's what basically happens. Chair's fine. It's not even fully depreciated. And can I sell that chair a second and third and fourth time without creating a net new chair? And if I can do that, it turns out that the margin analysis grows tremendously. So as the chair stays in about its same condition over 2 or 3 lives, get your gross margin grows. That's the first thing. The second thing on the cost on the revenue side is, can I get my costs down? If I'm using components and materials from products I've already produced, I don't need to buy them again.
Exactly. They've already been vetted, they've already
Yeah,
been certified,
correct,
you already have
correct.
the traceability and
Yes,
transparency layer.
yes. And what I'd also say is there's like that's a hard cost, and there's also like a soft cost, which is the winds of the global supply chain. So we might remember, I mean, we've done deals with, again, I'm on so many NDAs, but we've done deals with large big box retailers that have told us when we were using Rheaply and we were insourcing, store in the north side has what store on the south side needs, and they can make that match. Takes about 1.5 to 2 weeks for that sourcing. And that same moment, it was taking 18 weeks if that store had got it from their actual supplier, not within the business. So for the business, it's like, ooh, we're retail, or we have a hard point of sale. So when a customer comes in and wants something, we have to be able to supply the customer in that point in time. If we gotta wait 16 more weeks to be able to service our demand, what are we doing as a retail business? And so like I think of more revenue off the products you already created, less cost into each unit using and reusing components and materials you already have sourced prior. And then third, being able, especially on the indirect side, being able to insource things that your institution is using means that you don't have to wait a long time for suppliers who might be caught up in tariff wars or COVID-like scenarios. And so I just think on the business case side, and I've not even gotten to forget the waste diversion as a sustainability ESG metric. There's a cost of waste where there's a tipping fee. And I could tell you when it comes to certain materials, depending on their hazardous profile, it's going to cost you probably more to just throw them in the landfill to actually just take a moment and go like, does a business across the street need what I'm about to throw away? So same with cost of carbon. So I think we try to like lead with we actually have a cost calculator on our website. It's free. You go in, you throw in your square footage of your building, how many assets you have, and we can tell you how much you can generate off of that inventory. So I think again, it goes back to people seeing the stuff that you have as long-term valuable assets post their depreciation schedule. And if you think of value, why would you ever throw value in the trash or in the landfill? Your job as a supply chain leader, in my mind, your job as a facilities or procurement leader should be like, how does the business generate more value off of those assets?
Right. I love that. And when you were describing the business of waste management, and a lot of coming from specialty chemicals, it's
Mhm.
highly regulated.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, you have to secure third parties,
Mhm.
oftentimes to handle this waste. There's wastewater treatment, there's disposal costs, etc. And
Can I give you
thinking
an
about,
example? Can I give you an example on this too?
yeah, tell me.
So we're talking to utilities company, something I've learned literally 2 days ago, where when they do what they call monopole installation, so that's going to be your normal telephone pole, when they put it in the ground or dig one up, they have to put it with special soil. And that soil is extremely expensive for the business. So we learned that a guy come and told us, like, yeah, we were digging up a pole and we dug up 14,000 cubic feet of soil that's been pre-certified, that's been pre-tested, right? It was in the ground with the pole. They're digging it up now. And we go, what did you do with it? He goes, well, normally what we do is we just landfill it. I'm like, well, how much does that cost you? He goes, oh, about 1.1 million.
Wow.
And I go, you're throwing away dirt and it's causing you 1.1? He goes, yeah, but here's the thing. Other projects can use this same soil because it's already been certified, it's already been tested, it's all these things, right? But we didn't have a platform for me to connect to different product managers that were putting other poles that were doing the install because he was doing the uninstall. So we were like, wait a minute. Okay, this sounds like, and we're going to charge you what? $30,000 for a year-long subscription, and one project could save the company $1 million. And we're like, how many of these projects happen? He goes, well, I know about 30 right now. That was
Wow.
like last week. Right. And so when I think about just that example, how you talk about specialty chemicals and things like that, like, people think, oh, anything I could just go throw into the landfill and it's free, it's easy. It's like, there are many trucks. The transport is 200,000. So the cost of the tip was 1.1, but he told us the transport was 200,000. I don't understand, like, the whole throwing away is not free. And
There's no
actually it's
way.
much more expensive in most
There's
cases.
no way. There's no way. Even in the cloud, there's no way. There's cost to all of the waste management system.
Yes.
And with your background, particularly I think as a systems thinker, as a neuroscientist, as a circular economy technologist, you get that.
Mm-hmm.
But the
Mm-hmm.
average person, and there we have a lot of folks listening that come from different backgrounds and they're very intelligent, I'm sure. But the average person doesn't get what we get. They don't
I know.
understand
I know.
how all of this is connected, how all of
Yeah.
it is based on systemic poor design.
Totally.
And we've created these problems.
Yes.
And so again, this 10 Big Ideas series is really focusing on a regenerative future.
Yep. Yep.
And looking ahead, it's been 5 years since last
Yes.
we spoke.
Yes.
In 5 years, what's your vision, Garry? If you could close your eyes, how will circular economy trends evolve, especially around enterprise ecosystems? Because the corporate agenda, it's a no-brainer. What does 5 years look like?
Closing my eyes. 5 years looks like, I'll tell you, 5 years looks like there are more at scale take back programs for product manufacturers. 5 years in my mind looks like we figured out how to make reuse and circular economy a part of the decarbonization conversation. There's so many conversations between all the different frameworks of how we count this. And if we can't count the carbon, people just aren't going to use it in their decarbonization budgets. So I think we'll figure that out in the next 5 years. And I think, at least for Rheaply, I think we're going to get way better at like that problem I talked about with the beverage company, which is after you sell something, where is it? Who has it? What condition is it in? Because if we don't know where something is, I would say it's hard to make it circular. We have to literally know where the thing is. And so this kind of what we call Google mapping the world, the business world, of like finding where the stuff is before it's in surplus or before it's waste. I think is going to be something that not just us, but I think other people are going to think about. So those would be three big things. But to be honest, I hope that circular economy also is not something that we're teaching people about when we're having conversations. I spend a lot of my time going to business schools, talking to MBAs, going into mid-level supply chain jobs, not because it returns anything to my company, but because I think it's important for people who are going to be future leaders in the next 5 years to know words, circular economy, what it means, what it can do for their business, and not be having their sustainability people brief them on it, come into roles thinking, wait, why aren't we thinking more circular? There's a huge opportunity that we're not actually taking a part of. And so those are some of the things. I'd also just love to see it not be a green movement. I would love supply chain leaders and procurement leaders to be talking about it more often than your sustainability leaders are. But those last two are more wishful. But the first three, I think, could come to pass in the next 5 years.
I love your vision. And just last question, where does regenerative design come into play when we think about, I knew.
It's such a, if you can't design something for reuse, it can't be reused. We don't have products. We have very few consumable products on our platform that have been used once, because by definition, they're designed for that. So if you think of the inverse corollary, if something is designed to be reused, not to be consumed in one go, that then allows the ecosystem to extract value as it gets reused. And so I think, where you've seen this happen a lot more outside of like what I say plastic consumables is in fashion. but I like to see it in computing and phones and furniture and tooling.
Mm-hmm.
And there are models for this. Look at the car industry. I mean, my goodness, the used car industry is operating in some ways circular economy right now, at least in the United States. Look at Caterpillar's business.
Mm-hmm.
Most of what they do is leasing, right? So we just got to figure out a way, if we're selling couches, if we're selling TVs, if we're selling mobile devices, of like, how do we do what the car industry is doing? How do we do what Caterpillar's doing? Make more money. It's not just about sustainability, and make literally more money without producing more products. That starts with, how do we make better products that are designed to actually have 2, 3, 4, 5 lives?
Love it. Garry, it's always such a pleasure talking to you. I love what you're doing. You are one of those people, you're unforgettable, first of all. And, sometimes just existing and being in spaces
Yes.
that don't get people like us, I think
Yes.
that's the revolution. So
Yes.
you are a
Yes. Oh, I
revolutionary.
appreciate that. Well, I'm gonna keep shouting about this problem space, and even on the days when I'm sick and on the days that I'm not. And if anything, I hope it inspires two people to think a little bit more about not just their jobs in their company, but like, what can they be doing to actually help a circular economy come about. It's not just about saving the planet. It's about just growing the economy. Let's use some of the trillions of dollars of stuff that we're stepping on and driving over to power more economic prowess for every single community. And I think that's something that wakes me up in the morning, and I hope it wakes, at least two people up as well.
Thank you so much, Garry,
Thank
for
you. Thank you,
joining.
Sheri. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.